and welcome back to the Colour Cave, and welcome back also to another Tuesday bonus video for our lockdown period. I hope you are all staying safe and well and looking after each other as much as possible. So we're going to just have a relaxed hour of sort of chatting, and I'll explain what I'm doing as I go along, just to help you try and take your mind off things and maybe escape from all the very serious things that are going on in the world just now. So relax, get your tea or coffee or something stronger if you're that way inclined, and we can head back into Dromenvanger by Tomislav Tomic, and we can do a little bit more on our latest colouring page. I am using Arteza pencils. I have the 120 set here, and this is the first time I'm really using them in any sort of depth, as it were, so it's quite good fun for me to explore the different colours and things that are available as well. The other thing just now is you may hear a bit of rattling and banging in the background. Mama Jem is doing some housework while I film, so it's just her sort of rattling about the house, and it is quite a big echoey house, so I apologise in advance, and we'll try and keep those noises to a minimum, but she's helping, so we'll let her off. So as I mentioned in the tail end of the last video, I have completed this second stock of these toadstools. I just did that in my spare time off camera, so I have done my homework, which is good. I've had a little think about the other colours that I'm going to use, and with a page as busy as this and this type of artwork, I tend not to have a limited palette or a reduced colour scheme, just because it's a really busy picture, so all that kind of goes out the window, and it kind of makes it more enjoyable because you can just go ham and use all your pencils. One thing that I did think about, and I am going to do, is I really wanted this picture to be quite bright and vibrant, and in order to do that and let all these little details and, you know, lovely things that have been put in, I want to keep the background quite dark, and what that does is it pushes all these bright colours forward and everything really pops out. So I'm going to tackle a bit of the ground and possibly a bit of this background today, so it's not going to be really exciting in terms of what we're actually colouring, but it's an important step in the groundwork to making the rest of the picture really fun and colourful. So I thought I was going to pick out the pencils before I started, but I thought you guys would probably appreciate more the thought process as to why I'm picking certain colours, so I thought I would just include this as I go along. So what I'm thinking is, number one, the scale and size of the things that are in the picture. Obviously these are toadstools. Now they could be giant toadstools, but we have birds and we have flowers as well, which makes me think these are probably more at a ground level, and this might be a sort of secret community in the bottom of a forest floor or something. So what I'm thinking there is, thinking about that overall environment, there's probably a lot of foliage in the background. It's unlikely that the ground stops and the horizon starts and it's just clear sky in behind. So I'm thinking that this is maybe like nestled under, you know, like a tree trunk or something like that, you know, in a nice little pocket somewhere. So I'm going to use some really dark greens on the background. And thinking about this as more like a forest floor. Again, mushrooms and things like that tend to grow in sort of damp environments, so I want to keep the ground quite dark as well, to just try and sort of build up that idea and that atmosphere. And quite a lot of the time I find myself making up stories about these pages as I go along, and it's just the same as the artists doing it when they actually draw it. So for the ground, I think we'll start down here, and I'm going to do this strip here, and again I'll probably do what I did last time. I'll do this side and I'll leave this side till later, but I'll take note of the colours so that I can continue on and it's going to be quite consistent. So let's get into the swatch book, find the Artezas. They're here somewhere, there we go. So let's have a look at our brown selection. Again, I'm not very familiar with these pencils, so this is quite an important step for me in getting to know the pencils as a set. And I feel like there's no such thing as too dark, and the colours that I've used, they're quite a mixture of warm and cool colours as well, so we can kind of like do what we want here, but I do want to keep it quite dark. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to start with a layer of espresso and just take it from there and see how it goes. So as usual, the other tools, the periphery tools as I call them, aside from pencils that I have, is my Jingle sharpener, which is the multi-sharpener with the adjustable point sizes. I've also got my Derwent electric eraser just in case I make a boo-boo, and I have this. And I have this little soft brush. Now this was a makeup brush, it was just a cheap one, but it's really good for getting rid of your eraser shavings, or if you, like me, you sharpen your pencil over what you're doing, you can just brush it off. And then that way you're not getting any oils from your fingers on the paper, and you're not smearing anything in that you've dropped into the paper. And these things aren't essential, but they're certainly helpful. Again, I tend to work in sections here as well, so I'll zoom in a wee bit further. And I'm just going to start in this corner and very, very lightly, and using the side of my pencil rather than the point. And again, I'm just doing what I always do. I'm just mapping out the areas where I want this colour. And it's just a really visual indication to me of where the areas that I'm working in will be. Now, one of the things about doing soil and ground like this is I don't really want a flat uniform colour, because if any of you have ever dug about in soil, whether you're a keen gardener or whether it was just as a child, you will know that it's not flat and smooth, and it's certainly not all the same colour. So I am not in the slightest bit bothered about how even this layer of pencil is going down. And we're going to manipulate it and play with it even more as we go along and build up some layers. So just now I'm just picking out some areas here, and again just trying to sort of separate these lines in my mind so that I know where I'm supposed to be colouring. It's like a really bad game of Where's Wally? Or Where's Waldo if you're in the States. I would be interested to know, a little random side point, for those of you who are not in the US and the UK, what do you call Wally or Waldo? I think he's called Walter in Germany. Don't quote me on that. So if anybody would like to reveal to us what Wally's name is in your country, please feel free. That would be quite interesting to find out in the comments. So I'm avoiding these stones and pebbles just now. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with them, but I think I'll probably have them different colour to the soil. Maybe similar, in a similar palette, but not exactly the same colour. And there are so many nooks and crannies in this drawing. Doing things like the ground, although it seems really sort of monotonous and boring, it's actually a really important part, because you're setting that foundation for the rest of the picture. And although it's not the focal point of the picture, and it by no means needs to be perfect, you still want it to enhance and benefit the rest of the picture. So there's not been a lot of exciting things happening here at the cave, or outside the cave for that matter. Obviously with the lockdown still in place, we are being very careful. It's kind of important for us to stay as protected and safe as possible, because we have no option to just stop working and sit in the house, which I know a lot of you are so fed up doing, and it's getting really hard. But we still have animals that need fed and watered, and crops that are growing. And it doesn't matter how sick we are, those things still need to happen. And we still have cows popping out babies everywhere as well, and we've asked them really politely to cross their legs, but they're not listening. So we're just trying to keep ourselves as safe as possible so that we can keep looking after everybody and everything. And that's really all that we can do, and I think it's all anybody can do just now. We're all just doing our best. I'm not surprised, like nothing surprises me anymore, and most of you know my aversion to people is, I know we make a joke of it, but I'm really not that overly enthralled with the human race. And Papa Jem went out to get some shopping for us the other day. We've been taking it in turns, and Papa Jem went out this week, and he came back and he said that when he went out for some shopping, there was people actually standing, like visibly laughing at him because he had gloves and a mask on. So there, I mean, much as everybody's making a really good effort and we're all trying to stay safe and look after each other, there are people out there that just do not give a flying monkeys. And I think that's one of those things where I'm just like, yeah, not surprised about that at all. So thankfully it's only the minority, but as we all know, sometimes the minority spoils things for everyone. And I wish people would just stay put as much as possible. We have seen an increase just in the last week or so. The road that runs past our farm, it's quite a quiet road. You know, we are like way out. And the people that tend to go up and down the road are people that live locally. So, you know, like our neighbours. You know, when I say neighbours, we're not like a next door neighbour, but farming neighbours. That's what we call them, our neighbours, because they're the next adjacent dwelling, but they're like 2 miles away. And I have seen a huge number of people I have never seen before, you know, since we've moved, going up and down on bikes and walking and taking their dogs out. And in a way, it's actually quite nice to see that people are taking the opportunity to go out and get that exercise, because the UK lockdown rules are that you're allowed out once a day to exercise, and there's no, well, they say in like near your home, but there's no actual restrictions as such for the time being, but they have said you're not supposed to drive somewhere to like go to exercise or go and walk your dogs. So I don't know whether it's people from like the nearest villages to us and they've maybe just decided to go out on their bike, and it's something they didn't do previously. But yeah, I've seen a lot of faces that aren't our neighbours, so that's quite interesting. And we've had to shut off one of our farms as well because it's a sort of like a right of way, and people quite often walk because it's in a wooded area, and we've had to close the gates and lock them just to stop people coming in and out, because we don't know how many people are touching the gates, you know, and climbing over the stiles to, you know, to get over the fences. And it's not that we don't want people to walk there, but we just don't know who's going, and they could be unwittingly transferring disease or this virus to each other just by simply using the same gate latches and handles. So we have to do our bit to stop that as well. So yeah, it's unfortunate because we do want people to get out and enjoy the fresh air, and I am very aware that I am very, very lucky in that, because I live on the farm, you know, I can walk anywhere on the farm. Just like we've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres, and I'm free to walk about in that because it's our property. So it must be very difficult for people that stay in built up areas, and especially people that stay in like flats or apartments that don't have a garden. It's really important to get out and get some fresh air, and I don't really want to take that away from people, but we've still got to try and do our bit to, you know, cooperate and, you know, and keep everyone as safe as we can. So it's a bit of a catch-22. But we're trying, and I think as well, I get the feeling, you know, just from all the things I read in the media, some of it's accurate, some of it isn't, but it seems to be that everyone is just trying to do the best that they can and do what they think is right based on the guidelines that we've been given. And here in the UK, the guidelines they're not set in stone, and they are they're definitely open to interpretation, and even to the point where the police force have been confused about what they should be enforcing and what they shouldn't be. So it's yeah, it's a bit of a sticky wicket, but we're just trying our hardest to do what we can. Okay, so that's me. I've got this nice base layer down. So if I just zoom out a wee bit, just for my eye, I have a better idea of the areas that I'm going to be working in, and that lets me decide what colours I want to put down where. So I'm thinking that I will pick out another couple of browns. Now the espresso is quite a cold brown, so I'm going to bring in some warmer tones, and I'm going to use the dark chocolate, which is this one here, because it's still quite a dark pencil, but it's got that nice sort of warm red to it. Dark chocolate, there, it's there. And I'm also going to pick out a grey that's got a kind of more of a browny feel to it. So we've got, it doesn't actually do it justice on the camera. I might actually go to pewter now that I see them next to each other, just because this is a little bit darker. And I also want to incorporate some dark green, you know, like a kind of like a mossy effect. This is going to be a very blotchy background, but it's intentional. So I'm also going to pick out, I think maybe, yeah, let's go olive as well, which is this one down here. This pencil case, I love this pencil case because there's llamas on it. It's quite a new pencil case, and the little elastic hoops that hold the pencils in are still quite taut, so you've got to do a bit of sort of writhing about to get your pencils out. Okay. I'm going to decide if and where I want some, you know, sort of darker mossy patches, and I'm thinking around maybe the base of some of our toadstools, but maybe just in spots. So again, this isn't me actually trying to lay down the colour, that sounds ridiculous. This is me just indicating to myself where I want to put these colours down. As I'm thinking as well, in behind this ladder will probably be a place where that would happen, because maybe it doesn't get as much light and there's nobody treading on it. So I'll maybe pop some of that in there as well. And maybe around the base of this sort of hanging flower, this all kind of comes to a point here, and there's some little stones around it, so maybe we'll pop some in there as well. I can hear Mama Jem rattling about in the kitchen. I'm sure you can too. She's making a carrot cake. I generally steer away from carrot cake because it's usually got walnuts in it or on top of it, and I'm allergic to nuts. But I think this is going to be a nut-free one, and if it is, I'll be quite happy. I'm not a big cake person. I don't have a huge sweet tooth, but it's nice to have the option to have things. Right, and I think maybe I'm just going to pop in a little bit in here as well, just for fun. So normally when we think about a landscape, as it were, I'll use that term loosely here, we tend to think about things that are further away, so things that are in the background tend to be lighter in colour because they're further away. If you've ever looked out a window at a vista, if you look at hills in the distance, they seem much paler, and it's because they are further away. But I'm thinking about this in a much sort of closer up terms, you know, maybe this background's only a metre or so away, for example, and you know, in behind these items. So I want that, I'm going to keep that dark, and again thinking that the light source is primarily coming from the front here somewhere. So it's good to be aware of these rules. You don't have to follow them, and most of you will know when it comes to putting light sources in, I don't, you know, it's not like a scientific formula, but it's good to be aware of these things, because if you know the rules, then you can bend them and break them to suit your little self. So I'm going to stick with the dark chocolate in at the back here, because I do want to make that quite dark, so I'll probably mess about between that and the pewter, and I'm just going to work a little section at a time now, and I'm going to have to keep my pencil sharp because these are some teeny tiny areas. And I'll maybe add in some warmer tones of the dark chocolate as we come to the front. Sorry, I realised I said that the wrong round. Espresso. We're doing it with espresso first. So let's just start working away and getting down some colour. Now again, absolutely no pressure on the pencil at all, other than just letting it sort of slide over the page. Let the layers do the work. So one of the nice things that has been happening on the farm is this is the time of year where we take all of our livestock out of the sheds where they've been in for the winter, and we let them out to pasture, because the ground is dry enough now and the grass has started to grow, so they can get out and get some grazing. So we've spent the last few days letting them out in lots kind of thing. We put them into different groups, which depends on a lot of factors. And it's nice to stand and watch them go out to the grass for the first time, because they just go crazy. It's like, whoa, freedom. And then they have a good run about. There was a group of cows who they are expecting, and so some of them are quite heavily pregnant, and they were still running about like newborn calves, kicking their feet in the air. And I think the excitement was too much for one of the girls, because she had her calf about an hour afterwards. So yeah, that was good. But they are all due. They are, you know, they should be having their babies any time. So they seem to prefer it, and the calves seem to thrive better outside than inside when it gets to this time of year. Over the winter, if you are calving in the winter, they do fare better if they're inside, just because of the temperatures and things. But it's really nice to see them all running about. Okay, so I've got the pewter now, and I'm just going to pop this over the top here. So yeah, it's been nice to watch the cows out and about, but see, there's an awful lot of mooing going on until they sort of sort themselves out and the calves realise that, you know, mum might be a bit further away than they think she is. You know, that takes a few days, and the sort of calves learn their boundaries, and the cows relax as well when they realise that they're not going to run away and not come back. It's a bit of overprotective mother syndrome. Now, one of the problems we've had with this lockdown is, most of you will know, we moved into this house around sort of the beginning to middle of February, and the entire house needs a lot of renovation, and all that work was started and it's ground to a halt. And there are areas in the house where things are just unusable, and because of the restrictions now, we can't get any building supplies and we can't get tradesmen that will come out. We do have a joiner who is local, and I mean very local, and he's quite happy to come out, or has been happy to come out and work on our utility room, which is, it's kind of like a mud room, but it's multi-purpose, and it's a spot where we tend to go in and out the house. So, but there is only one door in, and the other door is into the rest of the house. So he's been quite happy to work away in there because we're not in contact with him and it's not a traffic area. So we've basically just been shutting the joiner in the utility room and passing him things through a gap in the door and sitting it on the floor. But that's all stopped now as well because he can't get any building supplies or anything because the merchants are all shut. So we're kind of in limbo. So we've shifted our focus out to the garden again now that it's drier. We have quite a large garden as well, and it hasn't been looked after for decades. It's very obvious. It looks like a big bit of waste ground. So we decided we would try and do what we could with what we have out there. So that's been sort of occupying the last few days while the weather's been good and it's been dry. So we found a ride-on lawnmower, and it's obviously been left behind because it doesn't work. Anything that I have found on the farm or in the house, I have assumed is there because it doesn't work, and 9 times out of 10 I've been right. So Mr. Jem and Papa Jem have literally spent the last 2.5 days trying to fix this ride-on lawnmower so that we can cut the grass, because it is far too big an expansive lawn to do with a standard push mower. You would be there for days. And I think that even if we could just get that done, I think it would tidy the place up, and also makes it easier for me to keep track of the dogs when they're in the garden, because they just kind of like disappear into this jungle, a bit like this actually. And especially with the little Jack Russell with Woo, sometimes I can't find her. I don't know where she is. Have to keep an eye on them, just make sure that they're safe, they're not eating things they shouldn't be, or they're not stuck somewhere. So yes, it's very entertaining, but as it stands at this point, the ride-on lawnmower is still lying in bits in the yard. It still doesn't work. I'm hopeful that we might see some progress today, but I shall not hold my breath. But Papa Jem's quite frustrated because he thought he had it all working and it's not. It's just not. He says there's so many bits missing off it, and of course we can't get parts either. Yeah, there's just nowhere where you can pick up spares. So yeah, challenging but fun. Okay, now that I've started to build up a bit of colour here, and I'm just wanting to keep an eye on where I'm using more of the brown and the areas where I'm using more of the grey, and it's just so that in behind things they kind of link up. So I've used quite a lot of grey in here, so I'm going to do the same here. And it's just to provide a little bit of consistency. And again, I'm not going to deliberate too much over it. It's not really about that, but it's about making it look nice. That's pretty much where we're going with it. Normally when I'm filming these videos, it is Sunday morning. Normally when I'm filming these videos, I usually have a cup of tea with me, and I don't know what's happened to me this morning. I'm just not feeling it. It's not quite 11 o'clock and I've already had 4 cups of tea, so maybe that's why I don't have a cup of tea with me. But we're all an up and going household this morning, which is on a Sunday. If there's going to be any day where there's less activity, it's usually a Sunday. But all 4 of us were up and raring to go this morning, so we just all got up and got on. I usually try and lie in till 7 AM on a Sunday if there's nothing pressing doing. But I was awake by like 6:10 this morning, and it was just one of those ones where I thought, you know what, I'm just going to get up. Why not? Just get up anyway and get on. So managed to get quite a lot done this morning though, before I filmed this, which is good. I am a person that likes to get up and do stuff in the morning though. I'm definitely that way inclined. And I always think if you have a productive morning, then at least if something goes wrong and, for some reason the rest of the day runs away with you, at least you feel as if you've accomplished something. It's a shepherd saying, and it's an hour in the morning is worth 2 at night, and I am a firm believer in that. But obviously you have to be a morning person and be able to get yourself up out of bed to take advantage of that. And that's something that I have never struggled with. And even Mama Jem tells me that even as a tiny baby, I was always up really early. It's just part of who I am. It's just, I can't help it. I'm just awake and that's it. But I can't lie in bed. See, if I'm awake, cannot lie in bed in the mornings. Just can't do it. Have to get up. I have seen myself as well in my slightly younger years, if I'd been out on a heavy night out and I'd been drinking, I used to, like, it didn't matter what time we went to bed, whether it was like 2, 3 in the morning, I would still be up at like 6:30, but quite often I'd get up and make myself a cup of tea or have my breakfast and then go back to bed. I used to do that a lot when I was younger. Now I just don't drink that much, so it's not really an issue. It's really horrible being awake at 6:10 in the morning with a hangover. It's just not nice at all. So I just tend not to do it. Mentally as well, I've kind of split this foreground section off from the back. You know, in my brain there's like an imaginary line running across here. I kind of want to introduce more lighter colours, but not too light. I don't know. I know what I mean. I'm trying my hardest to explain myself here. But the likes of this mossy green, what I'll do here is I'm going to put some dark chocolate down, just layer that over the top. And then I'm really going to start going in with this olive green. Again, I'm not using pressure though, not pressing hard, but just building up some layers. And then the espresso, because we don't want it to be like two-tone. We do want to incorporate both sets of the colours into one so that they merge together and they look like they are the same bit of ground. But on this bottom part I will use more of the, what colour was it? Yeah, we'll use more of the dark chocolate in this front part than the espresso, and just sort of lighten things up a wee bit towards the front. Now I'm not consciously picking and choosing. I'm just sort of going at random and, you know, I'll fill this bit in with this. So, and I do need to start covering more of the paler parts of the paper here. So I'm sticking with the espresso for this. There we go. I've got all these little itty bitty bits as well. Ugh. Squeeze that in there. I think I'll go back in here with the pewter a little bit. And then back to the espresso. And I'm just kind of finishing off this section in inverted commas so that I can start working my way down and not have to worry about this top part. So people have been asking me what I am doing outside of YouTubing and arting in general to keep myself occupied in the current situation. And the truth of the matter is that I don't have any spare time because things are really normal for us. Both Mr. Jem and I are still working. I'm still working my actual job. Well, I always call it my proper job. I am still employed because I work in the agricultural industry and I work specifically in disease testing, so cattle still have to be tested, which means I still have to work. So I'm not in this position that a lot of you are in, whereby all of a sudden I have to occupy members of my household or I have to occupy myself. And so I really don't have spare time for things. And obviously I'm putting out this extra video a week as well, which takes a bit of extra work too. So I've got that to occupy myself with. So my spare time is still very limited, but in the evenings just now I have been playing some video games. I do like to play games in my spare time, and I have just finished the main storyline in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which is the third Tomb Raider game in the rebooted series, so like in the new ones, and it was great fun. I really enjoyed it. So I'm going back to do another playthrough on a harder game settings. I played it on normal, but I want to play it on like the hardest setting as well and just see how I get on with that. And there's lots of like extra side missions and stuff, so I'm going to do some of that too. So I've been really enjoying that. And one of the things I've noticed, I haven't played Tomb Raider for it's a number of years now. I think the second one in the trilogy, I was maybe 2 years ago I played it. I can't really remember off the top of my head, but playing the third one now, I have become so much more appreciative of the scenery in the game, and they are beautiful, beautiful games, and you're usually in exotic locations. Like this one's set in Peru and a little bit in Mexico, and I've spent a lot of time just sort of standing, because you climb up, you do a lot of adventuring. For those of you that aren't familiar with Lara Croft, she is an archaeologist, and she goes and finds relics and tombs, hence the name Tomb Raider. So she does a lot of climbing and things like that in these sort of wild parts of the world where you know, civilization doesn't really touch very often. And the game developers have put so much time and effort into creating beautiful, beautiful scenery. So I find I've got like a newfound appreciation for stuff like that now. Because I've kind of dipped my toe in with digital painting and drawing as well. I've not done anything drastic with it, but it just gives you like a newfound appreciation and sense of awe for these things. And some of the environments in these games now are absolutely phenomenal. They're like jaw-dropping. So I have doubly enjoyed playing Tomb Raider this time. It's amazing. Even if you're not a video game person, I would highly recommend checking out some of the screenshots from the game. You can just Google them and they'll come up, and you can also enjoy what I'm talking about, because you can climb up really high and, you know, you get views out over vistas and things like this. It's really cool. Really, really cool. I haven't really been doing an awful lot else outside of that. I drew a banana in my sketchbook the other day. Does that count? It's as if we have monkeys living in the house. Papa Jem eats a lot of bananas. We always say that he eats too many bananas and it must be adversely affecting his health. But anyway, at one point there was 21 bananas sitting in our fruit bowl in the kitchen. So I decided to take one and just draw it just because I could. And it's, yeah, I like drawing stuff like that. Just, you know, just like a quick sketch, nothing fancy. Okay, I'm just going to pop a little bit of the screen down in here. So I don't know how well or how obvious it is, but I hope you can see the introduction of the chocolate here and how it's bringing a bit of a warmer sort of more mottled tone to what we're doing, rather than this flat colour that we've got going up along this back line here. So that's the kind of feel I'm going for over the whole page for this ground anyway. And it's just a case of having a little bit of patience with this and just working your way down. I say, thankfully this is quite itty bitty, you know, there's lots of wee sections, and I always think that makes it a bit more enjoyable and less like a, you know, a massive task. In fact, there's a tiny bit in there as well. Ooh. This is somebody's doorstep, so, you know, they're going to be coming out the door onto these little stepping stones, so maybe the ground might be harder packed there. I'll just start blending this in as well to the patches that I've already done with the green. I think as well, say that I'll make a sort of subconscious path there. I'm going to put some of the pewter down on top of this just to make it a little bit more obvious. My Jem's talking to herself. I don't know what she's talking about, but she's talking to herself. Oh, that's funny. And here was me thinking it was only me that talked to myself. Oh, watch her little beetle leg here. Ooh. Squeeze that in there. Yeah, there are some pretty tight spaces in this picture. And I'm finding that out more and more as I go along. Ooh. I'm going to shuffle over a wee bit and I'm going to come up and do this corner here. So this very back part, just what I was doing up here, which was a mix of the espresso and the pewter. This is such a tiny little space. And I'm just, again, just building up the layers. Nothing fancy. I say that a lot, don't I? Nothing fancy, nothing complicated. And it's not. I mean, most of the things I do aren't complicated. And it's back to the sort of situation of why would I make things difficult for myself when I can make things look quite pretty without too much effort? Then I'm going to do it because I colour to relax. It should be relaxing, it should be fun. Okay, so as we move down in here, I need to decide where my pewter's going, and I think I'm going to have a wee spot of it here. And that might extend. Oh, my stomach's rumbling. It really is rumbling, goodness me. I have had some breakfast this morning. Granted, it was a number of hours ago, but there was a joke circulating on the internet about people being advised to wear their face masks inside and keep them on all the time, and it's to stop them eating things out of the fridge. That made me laugh. It is really easy when you're not used to being at home all the time. You're like walking about going, oh look, there's the fridge. I struggled with that quite a lot when I first became self-employed, you know, for my proper job, and I was working from home all the time. And I went from being quite physically active to spending more time sitting at a desk, and the kitchen was right there. It was right there. And yeah, I found that really difficult, and I have put on so much weight because I'm not doing as much physical work as I used to, and the kitchen is way too convenient, way too convenient. It's a pitfall of being self-employed and working from home. I was really keen to get back out running, but now is just not the time for that. There's way too much stuff going on, and we have a lot to do in the house if and when things get back to normal, so it's yeah, it's just not that straightforward. I have lots of nice places to run though, which is real good. Just popping a tiny wee bit of this chocolate brown in here just because I can, but I'm primarily sticking with this espresso. So you can see there I've got pewter in all of these gaps, so I'm thinking, you know, that in behind that maybe runs as one sort of part of the soil. So it's things like that I find by just colouring in that initial base layer, it's easier to keep track of things like that, and it's something that I find quite helpful. I don't know whether you guys would agree with that or not, but again, you can let me know in the comments if you're feeling that way inclined. Just looking out the cave window, the sun is trying its absolute hardest to come out today. It was supposed to be really warm yesterday and we didn't really get much of it. I mean, it was nice, it was pleasant outside, but it wasn't that warm. And the sun was kind of like struggling to fight its way through the clouds, and today's kind of the same thing. It is dry enough to cut grass, however. So we shall see. It's quite good as well though, because the garden is directly onto fields which now all have animals in it. I can literally dump the grass cuttings over the fence and the cows can eat it. So that's pretty cool as well. Waste not, want not. It's really funny though, they're quite curious if you're out in the garden. They do come over to see what you're doing. It's like, what are you doing here? I was saying to Mama Jem, I wonder if they look at us when we're out in the garden and think, oh, that's their field, that's where they live. I don't know. I don't know if cows are that smart, to be honest. Pip's been trying to make friends, and she's kind of like stands at a safe distance and wags her tail at them, and they come over and sniff, but if they get too close she doesn't like it and she runs away and tries to go back in the house. It's like she wants to make friends, but she's actually just too scared to do it. We have a phrase for that, excuse my language, but we call that a shite bag. You know, if someone's too scared to do anything. It's like a good Scottish phrase for you for a Tuesday. Oh dear, yep. Anyway, so she's not no, she's not ready to make friends with the cows or the calves yet. The calves are terrified of her, they just run away. But it's very entertaining. But we try and leave them as long as she's not hassling them or harassing them, you know, or frightening them. You know, if she was like stood barking at them, I wouldn't let her do it. But she has to get used to things like that. And I always say to her when she starts, sometimes she maybe growls at them and I always stop her and I'm like, be nice. And she just looks at me like, oh, okay. Something that I've noticed just doing these colouring chats is just sort of incidental, is that the battery for my camera, I have two batteries and you know, I alternate, so while one's charging I can use the other one. But if I start filming a colour and chat on a full battery, the battery life is about an hour's filming time, which I find quite amusing. So it's actually a really good gauge for me. I have got a counter now up on the, you know, on the monitor, which is up here. So I do keep track of the time now, which is quite handy, but I just think it's quite amusing that a battery lasts roughly the length of a colouring chat. Can you hear the blender going? That's Mama Gemma carrot cake. It's so funny, I'm not used to having noise in the house at all, but obviously because there's 4 of us here, it's the house is a lot more lively, but we've realised, Mr. Jem said to me the other night, he says, I didn't realise how noisy this house is, you know, in terms of like echoes and floorboards and, you know, creaky things, and it is actually a really noisy house. But it's actually been very nice. The circumstance obviously is not nice, but it's good to have a place filled sometime. Our kitchen table, we've had the same kitchen table for years and it's big, it seats 8 people. And it is the sort of like focal point of our kitchen, and on the odd occasion, not all the time, it is actually really nice to see that table full of people. You know, sometimes if we have a party, or sometimes, you know, once we've done a lot of hard work, like after lambing or after harvest, we have all the staff and we like have a barbecue or, you know, just a party in the house, and everyone inevitably ends up in the kitchen. That is just what happens, and we have a good kitchen for it, so it's nice to see bums on seats as well. I wouldn't like it all the time. I think it would be too much chaos for me and I'd probably have a nervous breakdown, but it's been quite interesting, especially since Mama Gemma is in the house, having had knee surgery. You know, she's not out working outside or out with the boys, so she is rattling about the house all the time. And I'm like, it's made me realise how used to a quiet house I've gotten. Even, like the dogs are rumbling about with me and stuff, but it's kind of nice. I kind of enjoy it. Okay, so we're down round the front here. So again, back to more chocolate and olive green. I am just going to nip through though with this espresso and put down a few patches of that as well. Again, it's to get away from this two-tone, the two different sets of colours. I want to try and avoid that and make this look as organic as possible, as I said before. So if I just sort of meander my way across here and pop in some of this espresso, just in a few spots, maybe in here, why not? That's her cleaning the blender off. It's really bad that I know that noise. Oh jeez. And there we are, that's enough espresso, I think. This isn't very exciting, this is just layers and layers of my chocolate colour. That's just to bring everything together. And say not specifically trying to make it smooth and flat, that's why I'm like changing the direction of the pencil quite a lot. Now I'm back to the espresso, and it's more for in between these stones. Again, I just feel it might be a little bit darker in here, like in this little gap here. Now I'm pressing quite firmly here. There's no point in trying to build up lots of layers in tiny little gaps like that, because it's more hassle than it's worth, to be honest. So I'm just trying to join this up now. But as soon as I'm coming into contact with one of the other pencil colours, outside of this area, I'm lightening my pressure back up because I want to try and blend it together. Maybe make a dark spot there. Why not? Why not? Why not? And then just a light layer over the top, and again, it's just to sort of bring everything together, make this cohesive, maybe have a dark patch there. So all I'm doing is pressing a little bit harder there when I did that. And then I've got this chocolate again, just over the top. Another Scottish word for you, give it a quick wheech. When you wheech something, you like whip it out or pull it away really quickly, or like move quickly over a surface. So I'm just going to, a quick wheech of the pencil over. I think that's spelled W-H-E-E-C-H, wheech. That's really funny. That's a word that Mr. Jem uses sometimes now, and it's hilarious because he's English, and it sounds so wrong coming out of his mouth. Because he doesn't, he hasn't quite got the sound down, the CH as in a loch. And he still uses words like wee, which is funny. It's funny, it serves my entertainment. One of his favourite party tricks, the very odd time he has an alcoholic beverage, one of his favourite party tricks is trying out his Scottish accent when he's been drinking. And we get him to say all the colours. So the current favourites are purple, because he really overemphasises the U and the R, so he says purple, and that's him trying to be really Scottish, and it's terrible, it's awful. It's incredibly funny though, it serves everyone's entertainment, including his own. So purple, brown, burgundy. I said to him that I was like, in your head, is that how I sound when I talk? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, you make me sound very, very Scottish, like really broad Scots, and I'm not, and I know I'm not. And he's like, that's what you sound like. The other thing is that he refers to us as Jockanese, as in, I know some people talk about Scottish people as jocks, so he says that we speak in Jockanese, and he says it's pretty much a made up language. Which might in part be true, but it's quite funny. But yeah, and he'll say that to people, no, my Jockanese isn't that good. He's funny, he makes me laugh. But I always say to him though, he's just as bad. There's words and phrases that he comes out with. Now, bearing in mind, Mr. Jem and I have been together a long time. We've not been together, a couple of years. It's a bit more than a couple of years. And he still says things, even now. And I'm like, I've never heard you say that before. Well, what is that? And it's a North of England expression. I'm like, no idea what you're talking about. So he's just as bad. He mocks me for the things that we say, but he's just as bad. Right, I've got the espresso here, and I'm just popping a wee bit in there, just in the gap. Now what I want to do is, around this bird's feet in particular, I want to make sure there's a shadow to anchor the bird to the ground. It's something that you use in drawing quite a lot as well. You could go ham and do it around everything that's attached to the ground, but I just feel with living things it's quite important to make them not look as if they're floating about. So what I'm going to do is I am primarily going to stick to this chocolate brown, you know, the lighter, warmer brown. Try and manoeuvre my way around some of these items. I just want to show you what I mean here. I will build these layers up, but I'm going to show you on the lightest layer just so that you can see what I mean. So if you've coloured around your I nearly said your bird's foot. I don't know where the word boot came from there. And if you take your darker colour, so for us the espresso, and if you just line around one side like this. So for us it's going to be this lower side so that we can see it. But that instantly anchors your object to the ground. Especially with birds that can fly, you know, you don't want them to look as if they're floating. But just by that tiny little line, you can see that the bird has its feet on the ground, and that's a really easy and simple thing that you can do just to add that little bit extra to your picture. And it's, again, it's not a complicated thing, it's not a difficult thing. But that was one of the first things I learned when I was learning to draw, was always anchor your subject to a surface. You know, especially if you're drawing inanimate objects and you're learning to shade in things, they always tell you to put in, and that's called a cast shadow, and it's just a really good way to ground your subject matter, and I like it. I use it all the time. I'll probably use it selectively in this colouring page just because there's a lot going on and I don't want it to take away, you know, I don't want it to detract from the more interesting things in the picture. But for a thing like a bird, it's somewhere I would consider that it's a good place to use it. But there you go, you can keep that under your colourist hat and use it at your discretion. I'm going to start working in these colours again. There seems to be a bit of yellow on the paper just down in this corner, and you can see me going over the top of it. I don't know where it's come from. It must have been from when I was doing things up here, and it's maybe just got mashed into the paper. But I do not recall that. I'm usually quite careful at tidying things like that up. I get quite a lot of involuntary hand twitches because of I have an old hand injury, and I've got quite a lot of nerve damage, and quite often the pencil flies out my hand and it makes a streak or a mark on the paper, so I'm always quite aware of that, and I do tend to go around and clean up if I've had any twitchy moments. But I must have missed that one. I must have missed it. Right. So now you can see that little cast shadow that I've put in under our little birdie's feet. It's starting to melt into the other pencil as I build up the layers. So this is the point where you can pick a really dark grey or even like a really dark indigo colour. That's a colour I use quite a lot for that. But in this instance, because the ground is so dark, I'm going to use black, and it's not a colour I would use for a shadow normally. I say just because the ground is very, very dark in this picture. But I'm going to finish up these bits first. And I'll put that little shadow back in last. Carrot cake's ready. Right, now that I've filled this bit in here, I'm just going to, I've missed a spot there, I can see it. Goodness sake. I'll fill this in. Yep, so now I've coloured in this part here. I'm going to take that black pencil I was talking about, and we're just going to put in this cast shadow. So I'm just running the pencil down the... There we go. So our little birdie looks as if he's got his feet planted on the ground. So on my jobs list today, well this afternoon now, I am going out with Papa Jem back into the garden, and we have a few holes in the fence to patch up. There is chicken wire round the bottom of the fences, because our fences they're like what I call farm field fences. So they're wooden posts, and then they have wire that runs along this way, you know, the posts are up and down the way, and then it's plain wire, and along the bottom is some chicken wire. There were chickens here at one point. We don't have any chickens, but there were chickens here, and there are holes in the chicken wire, and unfortunately our Jack Russell can fit through the gaps, and she can get out into the fields, and when there's cows with young calves, that you don't want that, especially now that Woo doesn't see and hear so well. I don't want her coming a cropper, and I also don't want her stressing out the cows, so we need to patch some holes and make them Woo-proof. Papa Jem and I are going to work our way along the fence and fix those, repair those. That's if Papa Jem and Mr. Jem ever get the lawnmower working, but just, yeah, we'll see. I have about 18 loads of washing or laundry to do. It's just never ending. We always have the washing machine on a lot anyway, between Mr. Jem's work clothes, my work clothes when I'm outside helping, and dog blankets and things as well. But we have the additional 2 people in the house as well, so our washing machine is super busy just now. But on a day like today, even though it's not warm, because it's really not, the sun is trying its hardest, so we'll get it out on the washing line and see if we can get some of it dried. There is quite a stiff breeze, so that always helps. Honestly, I keep saying this, I've got such a terribly exciting life. Washing, fixing holes in fences. I'll just work my way around here again. This kind of like space in between the stones maybe be a bit darker. And I think I want some moss in here as well. I'm getting a bit more excited about the moss situation, so let's pop some of that down. That reminds me as well, Moss. We used to have a sheepdog called Moss. And Moss was probably the most handsome dog I have ever seen. He was quite a hairy collie. He wasn't long-haired, but he was kind of shaggy. And he had very similar markings to Jock, the male collie that we have just now. But he had the bluest, and I mean like icy blue eyes I have ever seen on a dog. And I normally don't like blue eyes on a dog, but Moss's eyes were amazing. I'll maybe try and dig out a picture of him if I can find one. And I'll stick it on the community tab because he was such a handsome dog. He was also one of the stupidest dogs I've ever had in my life. He was house trained, but quite frequently would like to have a poop in the middle of the kitchen floor for no reason at all, even if he'd been outside for like the previous 4 hours. And he was also the dog that was famed for being rushed to the vets for drinking formalin out of a foot bath. Now, formalin is really, really toxic, and its uses are very limited. We use it for sheep work. It is poisonous. You don't want it anywhere near your skin, let alone ingesting it, and Moss decided he would drink it. We use it to foot bath the sheep, to help with their feet, keep their feet healthy. There was clean fresh water about 3 yards away from where he was standing, but no, he decided to drink the formalin. So he was violently sick, and we rushed him straight to the vets, and our vets at that point was 40 minutes away, so that was a very stressful journey. Thankfully, he had vomited up most of what he had to drink, but the vet did warn us that it may permanently affect his digestive system. And after all that and the strife, I was really worried. I was probably the most distraught I've been in a long time. And he was absolutely fine after 2 days. His excretions were slightly funky, shall we say, for a day or two, and after that he was neither up nor down. I have no idea how that dog survived that. I really don't. But the thing is with formalin, if you get too close to it and you sniff it, it makes your eyes water. It is not as if it looks like an innocuous fluid. It is horrendous stuff, and what possessed him to drink that, I don't know. But he's just a really stupid dog. He was an excellent sheepdog though, and he was very affectionate, but he was just he's just a big dum-dum. That's pretty much the only way I can describe him. So that was Moss. He was a big dog though. He was a really big dog. Normally with collies, the difference between, and you see it more now obviously as the years have gone on, there's a huge difference in breeding lines from pet collies and working collies, and working collies tend to be smaller and lighter for obvious reasons because they're like the athlete equivalent. And Moss was a really big dog for a working dog, but he was good. But he was a big plodder though. There's not a lot of urgency about him. He tends to take a sort of cool and calm approach to herding sheep, which works in your favour, especially if you have pregnant ewes, because you don't want to stress them out. And he was really good for that. But he kind of took his time rounding up sheep, but he always did as he was told, always, when you're working him. But I say he was just a big dum-dum. And hairy, oh my god, so hairy, so hairy. And the disadvantage of that is that in the summer, in the heat, obviously the heavier their coats are, the more they struggle and the quicker they tire in the heat. And we've always tended to favoured short-haired collies, and although they're not as pretty, they're really not as pretty. They are much more practical for keeping clean, especially like us if you have your working dogs in the house, and also for the summer reason. They just do a lot better in the heat. They can cope a lot better. So, but Moss was something else. He was a good boy. He was thick, but he was a good boy. Okay, I hope you didn't hear that because Mama Jim's saying sweary words. I might have to edit those out if you heard that. Don't know what she's swearing at. Maybe something's going wrong with her carrot cake. Poor Mama Jim. I'm painting her in a bad light here or not. Okay, so we've got this back section to do now. Not much left to do. I'm going to sharpen again though. Just talking about looking for pictures as well, I was trawling through some old photographs and I was trying to find a picture of my lab coat that I talked about. It was the upgrade video where we were doodling, and I can't find one of it finished. It was a work in progress over 4 years. I have found one picture which isn't very good, but it does show where I'd started the doodles. The problem as well is in all the formal photographs that we had taken, you know, for various publications and one thing and another, I was always told to change my lab coat because everybody had to have a pristine lab coat on, you know, just for aesthetics. So all the official pictures, I am in a plain white lab coat. So I might show you that picture, but I'm going to have another look and see if I can find a better one, because the picture, it's quite an interesting picture actually, because it's not long after I had surgery in my hand. It must have been one of the first few times I was allowed back into the lab, because it was a bacterial infection. Obviously you don't want to be working with bacteria in a lab, which was what I was doing, and have an open wound. And in the picture I've got gloves on, but you can see the dressing that's over my middle finger, you know, where I'd had my surgery. So that would have been a number of months after I'd had my surgery, because it took me quite a while to recover from that. So yeah, that was quite interesting. But I'll try and find a better photograph, but if I don't, I'll pop that one up on the community tab as well. But yeah, I was quite interested to find that photograph. I think that must have been taken just before the end of the summer term, because when I had my hand injury, I had my surgery, it was like 2 days before my birthday, so it was the end of February, and I was a good couple of months recovering. I was in hospital for 2 weeks, so it must have been after that. Do you know that way you kind of try and sit and figure things out? You're like, that must have been about then. But yeah, I think it was during the summer, because my hair, I used to, when I was at university, my hair was really short. Like I had like a faux hawk, which I loved, by the way, and I would cut my hair like that again in a heartbeat. And you can see that it's grown out, and I've not been to the hairdresser, and I've kind of like straightened it. And that's what actually made me think that it must have been around that time, because I hadn't been well. Obviously getting my hair cut was the last thing on mind, because I was pretty ill with that. I did tell that story for our new subscribers. I did tell the story of my hand injury, and I'll link the video in the description where I told the story. I'm doing art telling the story as well, but if you're interested in that, I nearly didn't make it into my degree year because of that. I was very lucky that I pulled through. So yeah, I'll link that in the end card. I know we've had another sort of jump in subscribers again, and some of you guys might not have watched the older videos, so that's one thing, if nothing else, because I've been quite an adventurous person up until now, definitely in my 20s anyway. I have some good stories to tell. Not all of them good, it has to be said. That's one thing though, working on a farm, you always have good injury stories, because you get them a lot, you have a lot of them. So again, just in this back part here, mostly espresso and pewter. I did put a little bit of the chocolate in, but not a huge amount. I just feel like this isn't blended too well together. I just feel like this isn't blended together very well. This is a really itty bitty bit, because I've got the crease of the book, and then we've got these plants and these little pebbly things as well. It's a bit fiddly. As we come down round here, I'm going to get this chocolate brown on the go about here, and I'm just going to tickle that over into here, just because we can. I think Pip's been spectating on the carrot cake front, but she's back. Oh no, and we're away again. Obviously not that interesting in here today. I'm not happy with this top part at all. I keep going back to it. Oh, I can hear Papa Jem as well now. He must be coming in for some lunch. Pip's growling at him. Intruder! Oh, Jock's away to see as well. It's so exciting because someone's coming into the house. And we are just build some of this colour up now. In all the little gaps, like so. And there we go, we're nearly there now. Just trying to blend this together a bit better because it is a bit too patchy. And I know I said I wanted that sort of variation, but I do have a limit on that. You can be too patchy. I'll sharpen this up again and get in these spaces, and that'll be just about us. Okay, so we're all done now. Let's have a little zoom out and have a look at the picture as a whole. There we go. That's looking okay. I'm quite pleased with that. So you can see that I've kept the colours quite dark. We've got a bit of variation just to make it a little bit more interesting. So I think next time we will tackle a little bit of the background. I probably won't do all of it in the way that I've done this video today. I'll maybe do a section of it and we can move on to other things, and we can get on with some of the more intricate parts of the picture. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed just chilling out, relaxing today and seeing what is going on, and we shall see you back in the cave on Thursday for our regularly scheduled video. I hope you have a good day everyone, and please stay safe. Bye for now.